When you don't take time to look at it through other people's eyes. Take some time and reflect on what you believe in your soul. Cause that is the key to life. You gotta let the negativity go.
Hello and welcome to What the Fox podcast with your two hosts, Lindsey Fox and Amber Ross. Today we are going to be diving into ADHD mayhem because that is where Amber and I thrive and survive. But before we get started, I just want to make a note that we are sponsored by therapyappointment.com. So if you are a clinician who is going into private practice, please check out therapyappointment.com in order to manage your practice and have a nice little tidy system where you can do your progress notes and maintain your billing all in one space. And if you happen to be looking for a therapist, you can go there for that as well, to find someone near you. All right, Amber, let's get into it.
I mean, first of all, the fact that when you were sharing this with me, you called it ADHD mayhem made me laugh out loud completely because I'm like, there's no better terminology because it is mayhem in my brain pretty much 24/7.
Girl, it is a damn shit show. And somehow it is like my greatest source of being it's like my superpower at the same time.
Absolutely. I would 100% agree. It's like once you figure out how to manage it and make it work for you, you have superhero abilities to get all of the shit done.
Oh my gosh. But then whenever you don't know how to get all the shit done and ADHD is like hijacking every element of your life, it is the worst, most self-sabotaging, awful executive function disorder ever.
True story.
Yeah.
True story.
Oh my gosh. And
it's not all sunshine and rainbows.
No. In my case, it definitely comes in the form of procrastination, which is so annoying that I drive myself absolutely bananas with the procrastination aspect of things. So I've had to generate some true life hacks to hold myself accountable.
What? You had to set boundaries with yourself to not self-sabotage? Tell me more. No, I sympathize because I was diagnosed technically with ADD back in the day when there was still a division between ADD and ADHD. Now, thanks to you and our conversations, I've been made aware that there's no longer a division between the two. So I think perhaps we start there and sort of define what that looks like.
Yeah, that works. So I think, so a lot of people don't know that now in terms of the diagnostic manual that we use as therapists or providers, the DSM-5 and even the newest edition that came out. Yeah, it's just like a revised version that came out of the existing one. So, they have made it really clear that we just all forms of ADHD is just called ADHD now. So it used to be ADHD or ADD or ADHD. So just to clarify, it stands for Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder. So some people would issue the diagnosis of ADD saying, okay, you have attention deficit disorder without the signs and symptoms of hyperactivity, versus ADHD implying that yes, you do have the hyper activity component. And so I think essentially what the DSM started to do is just kind of look at ADHD in the scope of it being like a spectrum. So it's like a sliding scale of how your symptoms are mild, moderate, severe. They did the same thing with autism as well. So before there was a diagnosis of like Asperger's that was deemed a form of high functioning autism. And now they've done away with the name Asperger's and you just call it autism. It's just a high functioning, in terms of the spectrum, it's more of a very mild form of autism.
Yeah. And I think it's helpful to know and to start there because many of us, especially like our generation, that could be confusing to say, well, how are they different? How are they the same? When in reality, we're all different humans. Things manifest differently in our lives and in our brains. And this is just a category, an umbrella term to say like, here's the spectrum or the scale of all of the things that you could experience and all of the things that could rewire your brain or I don't want to say misfire because I choose not to think of it as a misfire. I do choose to think of it as a superpower because it's a different point of empowerment to figure out, like, this is just how my brain works. And I get to figure out how I decide to work with my brain. And I think that's where the life hacks come in. Yeah. Well, and sometimes you just have to give yourself grace to say, well, hell, that didn't go as planned. Like,
nope.
My entire school career was filled with self-sabotage of procrastination because I knew I, quote unquote, worked well under pressure. And the reality of that is, like, that was stressful as hell.
That's me every day. That is me every day. Even though I have the conscious awareness of what works and what doesn't work, you know, I know it. Yeah. Actually, I read something. Let me pull this out. I've got it because when I read this, I was like, "Oh, this hits home for me." It is in
You're like, light bulb.
Yeah, I've got to read it now because it talks about deadlines and, you know, for you and how your brain works. We've talked a lot about how, and you're a project manager by day, so like that's like deadlines make sense for you. Whereas for me, they actually send me into like relapse mode. So. There's a wonderful little meditation or daily reader I use, and it's called Meditations for Women Who Do Too Much. And it says, although we women who do too much do overwork and overextend ourselves, we also struggle with procrastination. Just let a deadline approach and we slip it into the abyss of lethargy. We just can't get ourselves going. Working at a steady pace is not our style. We work in spurts, intend crisis mode, operating, and then nothing. Just thinking about deadlines exhausts us. Meeting them wipes us out. Deadlines are a threat to the sobriety of a recovering workaholic. They offer us an opportunity to slip back into our old patterns. Remember, relapse is just as dangerous for a workaholic as it is for an alcoholic. We both have a progressive, fatal disease. And it offers like a reframe at the end of this, which I really appreciated. Yeah. It said, deadlines offer us the opportunity to reach out and ask for support. The deadline is a gift to help me see how much progress I have made and how I can function differently.
Yeah, I think that's huge. And it's not something, I'm trying to frame this. For me, not knowing what the deadline is makes me not want to do anything. So like if I don't have a plan for when something is due, it is not important to me. It becomes important to me when there is a timestamp on it. And then I choose how I want to pace that workload. And what that looks like for me, like life hack number 1 is a series of alarms for pretty much everything I do.
Yes. So that's funny that you mentioned that because that was on my life hack list for today as well, because and I can't just set one alarm. I have to set multiple alarms on all the calendars, all the devices.
Now, I prefer one device, and I do tend to just stick with the one alarm, but it's a recurring. So like an easy one for me, and this may sound silly to some. I forget to stand up from my desk while I'm working. I get sucked into whatever I'm doing. And because
hyperfixation.
Yes.
That's also ADHD.
It is, which I've learned over time. But because I work with folks who are all over the world, there is always someone awake that I can ask questions of, or that I can help, or that I can seek guidance from. So I could literally sit at my desk for 24 hours and never run out of people to talk to or problems to solve. So I have to set reminders on my phone to say, hey, get the hell up from your desk. Like you've been sitting here for 7 hours. It's time to stand up and move your body.
Yeah. Yeah,
Right?
That's what I like about my Apple Watch, actually.
Yeah.
I love that it gives me that reminder at the 50-minute mark every hour saying, stand up, Lindsay, walk
When
walk
I
around,
ignore
do
that
something.
thing, it is not annoying enough for me to actually do anything. Like my wrist buzzes and I'm like, yeah, I'll get to you later. It has to be like an audible, annoying sound that pulls me out of that moment of like, oh, let me go walk downstairs. Like, let's go see what's going on with Stella, the dog that lives here.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and that's frankly, I think that's where dogs are super helpful too, because then you're forced to get up and take them outside, or you're forced to get up and take them for a walk, even though you might still have another 3 hours of work to do. Like you'll get up and take care of the dog.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's using technology to my advantage so that I can take care of myself, because when life gets busy, my self-care is the first thing to go out the window. And I mean, it just honestly,
Shocker, big shocker.
shocker. Like everything else is a flashing red light that needs assistance. Everybody else's self-care, but mine is like, oh, it's okay. We can do that later. It's okay. Like that can slide to the side.
Not okay.
No,
Not
it's
okay.
not okay. So
Not okay.
in that same vein, and I know this drives you crazy about me, but I set self-care time as a calendar event.
Oh, you do
me.
whatever you want,
Like,
girl. I mean, that doesn't have any effect on my life. You do you.
well, I just mean like we handle that differently, but if I don't schedule it, it's easy for me to let it slip because it's not top of mind. So I have I have that set time to say, okay, this is where you prioritize things that make you happy, whether that's a face mask, whether it's a hair mask, whether it's sitting quietly in a room and reading a book, whatever that looks like, whatever.
Yes. So that's what I do think is interesting, because oftentimes you will see people that are diagnosed with both ADHD and a form of autism. And so when I say this, I'm like, well, so full disclosure, I personally have always wondered if I was on the autism spectrum. I'm 100% serious. I have always wondered this for as long as I have lived. I have never had a neuropsych evaluation to really assess it, but in terms of like a high functioning form of autism, just from, and for women, it goes often overlooked for a lot of different reasons. Same with ADHD. Boys actually are 2 times more likely to be diagnosed with ADHD than girls. A lot of that has to do with our social priming and conditioning of what is expected of girls. And so, girls are not supposed to be loud, boisterous, hyperactive, etc. So when it's
but
boys
will be
doing
boys,
it,
right?
yeah, it is very different. So it presents ADHD and autism do present very differently with people. But I've always been such a literal person that to the extent that I realize at times like I'm being really literal and struggle to undo it. Like I can see that something's not clicking between me and the other person because I'm stating something that I know is a fact and is accurate. And the person on the receiving end is receiving it with their own emotions attached to it. Yeah. And I'm sitting there like, where are we disconnecting right now? And
like, why is this not working?
Right. And I'll realize like, oh, I'm interpreting this very literally, and I see what they're saying. I understand what they're saying. And there's a disconnect.
Yeah. And it's so true, because we've talked about this before, right? The way we receive information is colored by where we are in the moment, is colored by previous interactions,
everything,
is colored by like life,
our environmental conditions. Absolutely.
And it's hard. It's hard sometimes to take that, 3,000-foot view to say, oh, I see where you're coming from, and then successfully communicate that information.
Yeah. And something I saw the other day, which I liked, was this little meme that said, I used to think communication was key, but it's actually comprehension. And it's like, yes, because I will comprehend things around me and then really, really pay attention to my word choice to ensure that I'm communicating something correctly. But then I'm like, what went awry, and why am I not on the same page with someone right now? What is that? And so,
because we're people.
Yeah.
Like it's like all of this works in a vacuum. If everything's sterile and if everything is like emotion free and everything is stress free, on paper it looks great. And then you throw human interaction, human emotion, and it's just like, oh, you just can't account for everything.
Right. But and that's the other thing is like I'll see kind of where emotions can stem from. And I'm like, yes, but that is an inaccurate alignment of emotion with the fact. And so I really have to, like sometimes I have to seriously pull myself out where I'm like, okay, I see it. There's just a disconnect and we're just going to keep moving.
Yeah.
But it is something very interesting because it's like, fortunately, I'm someone who has a really good sense of self-awareness around these
Yeah.
things because I've intentionally tried to understand these elements. But anyway, whenever I get back to like other like little life hacks, for example, what we were just talking about, whenever I mentioned the Apple Watch, my brain just hops straight over to thinking about my AirPods. I would just like to share that I have now lost my AirPods in a huge way 3 times, to the extent that I had to buy a second set of AirPods because I could not find them anywhere. And at this point, I'm so mad at myself because I have lost the charger for one set of the AirPods. I have placed them somewhere in my house. It has been 2 weeks since I've been able to find it. And now I just need to suck it up and buy one of those tiles. Speaking of making technology work for us.
I was going to say, get a pack of AirTags because I put them on my keys. My keys are the thing that I lose most often. And Eric, my husband, for those who don't know, makes fun of me relentlessly because I don't know what happens. There is a key hook right beside the door. It would be very simple to come in the house and put my keys on the key hook where they belong. However, they end up in jacket pockets, in bags. They end up in the refrigerator. They end up in the refrigerator. Like, just have no idea. So we get to go on a hunt for my keys so often that I put an AirTag on it because you can buzz
it and make the noise
from your phone. Yes. And I'm like, brilliant, because the whole reason I got an Apple Watch was because I kept losing my telephone.
Yes.
So I can ping my phone from my watch. And I'm like, oh, it just makes sense to be able to do that with my keys too, because then I can always find them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Imagine that.
I'm like,
I'm in the same boat, but I still didn't learn after the first few times of losing my freaking AirPods. And now here I am. I'm so mad at myself. This is another thing that definitely is so I'm like, Lindsey, you've been talking about wanting to get a freaking tile. I've been wanting to get one of these like tile or tags or whatever forever. And now here I am saying, see, this is why I should have listened to myself a while ago. But I procrastinated, y'all.
You do have good advice and it's worth listening to. So I can go ahead and echo that. But sometimes we have to learn shit the hard way. I mean, that's just the reality. And that I don't think that's exclusive to people with ADHD. I think that's the human element again, that sometimes it just has to be painful and repetitive enough for us to go, I don't want to experience that again. Let's try something different.
Painful and repetitive enough. That sounds like my entire life.
Okay.
Man, trying to learn my life lessons. It's like you just have to keep going until eventually it's like, okay, it clicked.
Like, oh, there we go. Yeah, go ahead.
Let's talk about clutter.
Oh my God, that's hilarious. Literally.
Let's
talk about clutter.
Okay. How are you with clutter, Amber?
So I had a realization, and it's not the first time I've had this realization, but it finally sank in for me last weekend. I think it was last weekend. I had been so stressed all week, and I follow a cleaning and clutter calendar. This will not surprise anybody, but like I have certain things I do every day to help manage my brain because what I know
this is amazing.
Right? I know. What I know about me is my brain does not function well if I am sitting in clutter. My brain and my space are a direct reflection of each other. So if I am sitting in a space that is cluttered and a mess and just totally bonkers, my brain misfires and I can't function and I'm completely paralyzed.
I would also like to note this. This is what I think is so fascinating about ADHD. I am the complete opposite from you for the same reasons in some ways. I definitely want to keep going with what you were saying, but I just want to comment as well that different forms of OCD are also commonly co-occurring or with ADHD. And something that a lot of people don't tend to associate is that OCD does not have to mean everything is neat in its place. In
Mm,
fact, hoarding and excessive clutter is also a form of OCD.
yeah, I understand. And the way that I have figured out I can manage this in a way that makes me happy and content and at peace is every day I have a set of tasks that get done. And that's taking shoes and putting them back where they belong because I have two
Mm,
tiny humans in the house and
yeah,
like things just get
everywhere.
carried. Right. And what I found last week was that my work schedule was extraordinarily busy. So I didn't have time to do my daily tasks. So by the time I got to Friday, the entire house was in disarray. Nothing was where it was meant to be. I could not find anything. And I was so anxious and so overwhelmed. Friday night, Eric and I spent like an hour righting the house, getting things like sweeping and mopping and, just putting keys where they belong and just simple tasks. When
After
we
you
got
found them.
done, right, when we found them, after we got done, I took the biggest inhale and the largest exhale. And I was like, that's what's been wrong all week. Like, this is why I can't manage
Mm,
anything from emotions to tasks to do lists to any of the things. I'm like, my space has to be
yeah,
not perfectly pristine clean because that's not my
right.
goal. My goal is
Tidy,
just
tidy and
tidy.
clean are two different things.
They are two different things, and
Yeah.
tidy is a must for me to be able to function because my brain is just too jumbled.
Hmm. I'm a clean person and extremely messy.
Hmm.
I mean, my thing is I definitely have a major issue with clutter where and I've been purging all kinds of stuff all over the place.
Yeah.
But my source of clutter is, and this has been forever, paperwork.
Mm.
Always paper. My like clutter is a huge problem whenever it comes to paperwork for me. And so little life hacks that I've had to develop for myself over time has been like making sure even my workspace, like the desk where I'm sitting right now, I have to make sure to downsize the size of my desk. Whenever I'm living somewhere, I need a smaller desk. Why? Because
Yep.
that leaves less room for more paper to stack up. Because I know that I am going to create lots of organized chaos in my office
Yeah.
where I know what my crazy mess piles of paper stacked on top of each other are. I know what is where and that it exists somewhere in the pile. Um, but if I have a smaller desk, I am more inclined, because I am forced to, figure
Mhm.
out a filing system that where I get everything tucked away. And so I have been going through boxes of paperwork that I had to basically ship from Massachusetts to North Carolina. So I'm finally kind of like throwing away what I no longer need and
Yeah.
getting everything filed. And while it feels really good whenever I'm finished with one file folder, it is very overwhelming to figure out which things to throw away.
Yeah. It's decision fatigue, right? It's that
Yes,
thing
that's
having to
exactly
make
what it
constant
is.
decisions about everything.
Yep.
And I agree with you because that's something I don't necessarily struggle with paper because that it's just not one of the things that I struggle with, but I struggle with figuring out what to wear. So my decision fatigue presents itself
Oh,
in like having to make a conscious choice
every
every single day about what clothing I need to put on for that day and go like it's
yep.
mentally exhausting for me. So rather than starting my day in a mentally exhausted state, I do it at
Yeah.
night and I just
Sure, pick it out
grab
the night
yep,
before.
I pick it out, I set it out and I'm like, this is what we'll wear tomorrow. And like it just I also kind of keep my wardrobe limited to, certain colors, certain things that are easy to
Yes,
match
I saw
because
your closet. I remember seeing your closet and I
you're
was
like, where's the
like,
rest of your clothes? I'm like, this is
yes.
it.
Okay, and just for people, just so you guys know, I used to have a major hoarding issue with clothes in the sense that not hoarding in the sense like an episode of a TV show that's called Hoarders. I don't mean that. I mean but I do have 5 closets full of clothes. For I used to wear business suits every single day for work, so you better believe I have 2 full closets of just suits and skirts and blazers and dresses. I have
And
not
I
worn those
have
things in
one
many years.
half of one small closet, which is primarily at this point filled with athleisure because it's mostly all I wear. However, I too had to wear business attire to the office every
Yep.
single day, but I had like 7 outfits that I wore. I never exceeded that number because it was just too much for my brain to decide all of the things. So I
Yeah.
intentionally keep it very limited so that I don't have to worry about that. And I think last year or the year before, the term capsule wardrobe became suddenly very popular. And I
Never
realized,
heard of it.
I was like, oh, this is sort of what I do. The idea of a capsule wardrobe is everything is like similar colored. So it's easy to mix and match and
Oh, yeah.
things all go together. Now, mine is capsule in the sense that it's limited. I have plenty of clothes to wear. It's not a big deal, but I don't
And I have
have
plenty that you can have in case you don't.
I don't have an overabundance. I don't have a lot of extras. I keep what I wear, and if something no longer brings me joy, it leaves the house, like Marie Kondo says, right? Like,
And if I'm
you're out of
having
here.
trouble getting rid of shit, I then give it all to Amber because then I feel more at ease because I'm like, oh, you know what? I can go visit that shirt in her closet if I feel so inclined. And Amber, as long as you do not tell me that you donated it, we're good.
Yeah.
You can donate it, just don't tell me that.
Yeah, we have a great working relationship here.
Yeah, I just give her stuff as I purge through my house. I give it all to Amber and I say, don't tell me what you do with it, but I'm giving it all to you. And she says, thank you so much. And then I never see it or hear about it ever again.
And everything's fine.
And everything's fine. I love this. It's a good system. And I will
It's
say
a really good system.
I've also developed that system where if I buy something new, I have to get rid of something.
Yes. And I love that because it helps to keep things in a manageable state. So when you think about paperwork and your desk being small, because you can only fit so much before it's unmanageable. It's
Yeah.
the same system. It's just different. It looks different, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I will say, like, as I think about a lot of the things that well, now I'm like picking up the pieces and making everything better now. But in terms of like the acquiring of clothes and home decor, a lot of that, I don't want to chalk all this up to like ADHD fixations here, because I do recognize in my life a lot of that took place during my marriage whenever I was really unhappy. And so
Yeah.
I was really leaning into like retail therapy as my coping skill. Because I was home alone all the time. He was never home. And so for me, it was like retail therapy was my solution of let me just go buy more home decor. Let me go buy more clothes. And
Yeah.
it's like, did I need any of it? No. Did it make me happy? No. So that definitely is not that I cannot say that's ADHD speaking, but certainly in the sense of my paperwork clutter and not wanting to get rid of receipts and thinking, oh, well, I might need that later. That's totally where I see my ADHD kind of work against me. So,
Well, and it
getting
all
rid of
makes sense because the reality of ADHD, we have to be creative. We have to be clever. We have to
hmm
find organizational strategies that help us manage our brain's tendency to be like to have a shorter attention span or to get distracted by the next bright and shiny. So like I intentionally distract myself with bright and shiny. Like
hmm
my notepads are bright colors that I put my to-do list on. My calendar's color coded because it's easy for me to say, oh yeah, this next thing's going to be a video call, or this next thing is going to be somewhere I have to drive and get to so that I
Yeah.
can adequately prepare myself without feeling that like intense jolt from situation or task to task.
And also, like, that makes complete sense because it's how our brain functions. But I think something to keep in mind is ADHD is a disorder that is connected with our dopamine system, and dopamine is our pleasure principle. And so when we think about what does that mean, it's like this is where procrastination comes in, or a source of motivation, all these things, because it's like, okay, I don't want to do this thing because it's not fun, and therefore I can't get it to sustain my attention for long enough to complete the task. So how can I make this task more fun or enjoyable or pleasurable so that my dopamine can get the the jolt that it needs to kind of
Yeah.
to complete the task start to finish. And the way that I kind of describe this to parents, which this is kind of interesting, but most kiddos, if you have ADHD, more likely than not, one of the parents probably
Yeah.
has ADHD, and maybe it just hasn't been diagnosed. But the way I kind of like to describe it to parents who seemingly like they really just can't grasp what the life of ADHD might feel like for a kiddo, is I'll say, think of it this way: like if you pinch your skin like this, like if you're pinching someone, it's like, oh, ow, that hurts. For like your neurotypical person, you just do a light pinch and it's like, oh, stop, that hurts. Whereas for someone with ADHD, you might have to pinch and twist and go a little bit extra harder to get the same exact reaction.
Yeah.
And it's just because that's how that dopamine receptor works.
Wait, so you mean my high pain tolerance is connected to the fact that I have ADHD?
I mean, I am not a doctor to confirm or deny, but
it's an interesting theory.
It's an interesting correlation.
It's an interesting theory.
And I truly do wonder if there's some research out there around that, because it actually it wouldn't really surprise me, but who knows? I have never looked into it, but it's actually an interesting thought.
Now, see, this is what I'm going to be up at midnight researching, because now I'm hyper focused on something. So this will be the next one.
That's fine. Let me know what you find out.
It's
never
fine.
really looked into it. Yeah. The other thing I would like to comment on is time management, because this is definitely like in terms of a life hack, because for me, I feel like I can easily say, oh yeah, I'll be done in 10 minutes, or, oh yeah, let's meet at 2:00, or really what I'm actually saying is I'm probably going to leave my house at 2:00. I'm probably not going to be there at 2:00. I'm probably informing you of the time I'm leaving my house. I'll see you from 2:00 plus my travel time. And so I've really had to get better in terms of my own life hack of being realistic with my times. So if I know I'm supposed to be somewhere at 3:00 in my calendar or my alarm system, I will say I have to be there at 2:30. So I give myself incorrect times on purpose with all the bells and whistles and alarms, because I know kind of how I operate.
No, I think that makes a lot of sense. And I used to try that with my alarm clock. Like my alarm clock beside the bed would be 30 minutes earlier than real time, quote unquote, air quotes, right? To try to trick my brain. And then I started getting mad at myself because I was tricking myself. And it was just this whole rabbit hole of just shenanigans. So I'm glad that works for people. And it's just something that ended up making me really angry with myself, because then I ended up where, like, you were upset with yourself for losing your AirPods and your charger and all of that, and thinking, why do you keep doing this? My internal voice was like, why do we have to trick ourselves? Why can we not just do the thing that we know we need to do?
Why must we judge ourselves for needing life hacks?
Dude, exactly. It is a vicious cycle of all of the ways that you can nitpick yourself and pull things apart, which we've discussed in previous episodes, that we are our absolute worst critics. So with all of the information we're talking about today, I want to make sure that we say, give yourself grace. If one hack works for you, cool, use it, leverage it, make it work to your benefit, and make it a strength. If it doesn't, bless and release that shit and move on to something else, because there's thousands of life hacks for people with ADHD that are tried and true, and some that are completely experimental, but you will never know until you actually try it for yourself. And it's not, I think it's very easy to get down on ourselves when something doesn't work, or if something is not helping us. And that's something that we want to avoid, because again, perfection is not the goal. Progress is the goal. Making your life smoother, making it more enjoyable, making it more productive and effective and efficient. Get the shit done. However, it has to happen.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. Honestly, you know who I love is this therapist, Casey Davis, and she is her on, I'm trying to remember what her TikTok versus Instagram handle is, but she's known for struggle care. And
Oh, okay.
I think on TikTok, her name is Domestic Blisters, but she's a therapist who does have ADHD and has major depressive disorder, and is really open about her story. But she's also a mom to a young child, and so she shows her very raw, real, uncut life of her home being a complete disaster, and I mean disaster. But she also shows how does she, like, what are her routines to go about, cleaning up that kind of space. Because, and I love how she normalizes, like, you know what? You deserve to have clean sheets. If you cannot get your room clean and your whole room is a freaking disaster, fine, let it be disaster, but you are worthy of clean sheets. So change your sheets and allow yourself to have clean sheets. And if you have a pile of clothes all over the place, fine, make a path so you can walk to your bed. If that's all you can manage to do for that day, that is enough. You deserve clean sheets and a path to get safely in and out of your space. And I love that she normalizes this, because I feel as therapists, people think we have our shit together, and it's just like, what? Like, do you realize we are just as human as the next person? We've got our shit. That's how we ended up in this field. Like, what? So yeah, we're just as human as the next people. And I love that she does this.
I love that. Yeah. It's a very unfiltered.
Yes. It's nice to be unfiltered and to see someone else go through those kind of moments where it's like, Lord have mercy. And like, for example, I'm like I'm very particular about like environmental friendly approaches to things. So I kind of cringe when I see these things, but I'm also like, you know what? I also understand the message behind it, which is if you are, someone who really struggles with like doing the dishes or having certain things done a certain way where you just leave them out. It's like, if you know you're that person, then if you need to use paper products so that you're not having dirty dishes all over the place and you can just give yourself permission to throw it away, then throw it away. Because this is like the less glamorous side of ADHD people don't talk about, is the fact that there are hygiene problems that take place. There are, cleanliness issues that can take place with people, because it does occur. ADHD can also come with depression, come with anxiety. There's a lot of other disorders that can come with it, that is not so much of a superpower, and it doesn't feel so glamorous or pretty. And I think that it's important to normalize the fact that too also exists on that ADHD spectrum.
Yeah, absolutely. And you find ways that work for you. And I'm a huge proponent for environmentally friendly aspects, and they have compostable, you can't really call them paper plates because they're not really paper, but they have disposable products that are eco-friendly or more eco-friendly than they have been in the past. So yes, I hear you. I agree with you. And I'm a huge supporter of finding ways to make your life work for you, because just like we are not made to fit clothes are made to fit us. Like lifestyle, you have to find it that fits you versus trying to like reinvent or change that. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah. That's what I'm saying. Like, I love the idea of doing things that just because you think this one thing belongs in the kitchen doesn't mean that you can't use that thing in your bedroom or office. Like,
absolutely.
It's like allowing your brain to think outside of the box of how can I make this a more functional space for me and my personal needs, where it's like, if it doesn't work for you, that's fine, but I need my space to feel functional. So if you see something like weird that would be deemed like being for the kitchen and you see it in my office, well, it's because
don't
it
worry
works
about
for me
it.
In my office.
Mind your own business. Listen, I have a Lazy Susan in my bathroom. It's meant for a kitchen table. It works great in my bathroom for skincare and toothbrushes and all of that stuff. I was like, yes, please. I'm a spin it. And then
I saw that and I thought, oh my gosh, that is brilliant. And I don't think I ever said anything to you, but I loved that idea. I love these kind of like little things that just make life easier, little life hacks.
Well, and I remember it's so funny. So this is the ADHD side of my brain, I'm sure, but I got hyper fixated when everybody started sharing the way they were cleaning up their bathroom products and making things like really aesthetically pleasing. And All of that looks beautiful. The people who do the restocks in their fridge where everything's in a clear container and it's all color coded, like
that
I
gives me
love
anxiety.
Listen, I love watching it. I love that for other
Yes.
people, they have the time and the space and the wherewithal to do that. It does not function in my house because in 3.2 seconds, one of my tiny humans is going to destroy that shit. And then I'm going to be mad because I took time to make it a certain way. So I say all of this to say, I went down a little foxhole, if you will, of trying to figure out how to make my bathroom more aesthetically pleasing because I felt pressured and I knew my system wasn't working. And I was like, oh, well, it has to be a system of clear containers. That's what's going to fix it. And I started looking around the house because I have put myself on a budget of not buying new things when we can repurpose things that are in the house. And I saw the Lazy Susan that Eric made many, many years ago that was just sitting on top of the refrigerator, not being used. And I was like, boom, that's going to be great because you can spin it and get exactly what you need and put it exactly back where it belongs and it stays organized and clean. And it was such a good moment for my brain, for our household that I'm like, hey, I did a task and it looks great and I'm happy with this and moved on without stressing myself out or buying, 17 clear containers that I didn't need.
Yeah, don't do that.
No, I mean, no, that system would not work here, but it's another note, right? We see things on social media that work for other people. We see things on social media and feel this pressure to perform or pressure to change our space because it has to meet some aesthetic. And that is just not reality for everybody.
Yeah. And that is not my jam. I feel like that part of my creative genius is my chaos. I mean,
you're an artist. Like I find this.
Thank you, Amber.
Yes, you are a beautiful artist in so many ways with words, with paint, with all of the things. You call it chaos, but your space works well for you most of the time. You have to tweak some things and you have to alter some things, but it works well for you. And putting you in a sterile environment would like kill your ability to create. That's not what you need.
Yes. And I've already tried to live that life and it was not one for me.
Unsubscribe.
I unsubscribe from that shit.
Like,
it just
10
was
out of
not
10
for
would
me.
not recommend.
Nope. And honestly, that's where I think that frankly, in terms of like relationships or whoever I end up with in future, I feel like I would be a really good partner with someone who is like you, Amber.
I mean, I'm taken.
I had to think about it. Yeah, I don't want you, but I think that you'd be a good partner for someone like me in the sense that opposites attract balance is so needed because like I look at the shit that you do and I'm like, I could never do that, but I freaking love that it works for you and that you are the way that you are because it's everything that I'm not. And, if there were two of us, like if there were two of me, this shit would be on fire. I mean, like what? I just like one of us has to stay focused and keep our shit together.
Oh my God, that's hilarious. Yes. Mm-hmm.
I'm very grateful for all of your color coordination and calendars and stuff. It's really helpful and I'm grateful for people like you for existing and it's just not my jive, but I love that there's people like you that help people like me.
Well, but listen, it takes all kinds to make the world go round, right?
Absolutely.
Like your style helps me to balance out and not take myself so seriously and not feel like deadlines are in permanent ink, that they can be written in pencil and just it's a totally
that gives me major commitment issues right there. the deadline stuff makes me feel like
oh my goodness. I feel like this has been such a fun conversation and I hope that the listeners gained some, whether it's a laugh or a little insight into who we are as humans or whether you picked up a new life hack along the way. I hope you consider that a gift. I hope you've enjoyed listening to this episode because I certainly enjoyed the conversation as usual. No surprise there.
Ditto. All right, guys and dolls, thank you so much for tuning in to What the Fox podcast. And as an FYI, March is International Women's Month. So I just wanted to, I meant to lead with that earlier, but just as an FYI for March, a big focus is thinking about how to celebrate women. So we'd love to hear from you. How do you like to celebrate the women in your life? And what can you do this month to honor them? Let us know by checking us out on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, whatever floats your boat is fine. Anyway, until next Tuesday, guys. Bye.
See you next Tuesday. Bye, y'all.
And we all sing, everything is gonna be just fine. It's gonna fall into place. The sun is gonna set on your terrible day.